Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Flawless Execution, a podcast brought to you by UNICOM Engineering. I'm your host today, Tyler Kern. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of the show. Joining me here today is Bill Pfeifer. He's the Edge Messaging Director at Dell Technologies, and you guessed it, we're going to be talking about the Edge today. So, Bill, welcome to this episode of the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Tyler. It's great to be here.
Excellent. Well, it's fantastic to have you here on the show, Bill. And obviously, you have a lot of expertise in this particular area. And so let's start off here. How does Dell Technologies actually define the edge? What does that mean at Dell?
So a lot of different people have a lot of definitions and many don't agree. So I actually do like starting most of my conversations with a definition just to make sure that we're on kind of the same page. At Dell, we define the edge as the place where data is acted on near its point of creation to generate immediate essential value. So that is to say, right, if you're backhauling data to a cloud or data center, that's a cloud or data center solution. But if you have data that either couldn't be moved or shouldn't be moved because it's too big or it's too fast, right? Like it's got sub-second value or security and privacy concerns or something like that. So you have to put the compute right near where it's created. That's a great use case for edge computing. And very often at the edge, we'll see data generated, consumed, actions taken, and then the data is destroyed immediately because it has no further value. In some cases, it'll have long-term value, and then you may backhaul it to a data center or cloud in addition to the edge stuff. But very often, it'll be right at the edge, and then it'll go away, and that's it.
From what you've seen and from your experience, what's driving growth at the edge right now? What sorts of things are kind of pushing and driving us forward in this area?
So what we're seeing mostly are a couple different things. What's making it possible is new data types, new algorithms to process the data to generate value and to get insights that we couldn't get before, and new hardware technology. Right. So fundamentally, the edge is rebalancing technology outside of clouds and data centers. Where we pulled all of our technology into data centers and clouds because it was big, it was expensive, it was fragile, it needed a lot of care and feeding. Now we've got compute that's small, it's durable, it's easy to install, it's easy to replace, it's powerful enough that we can run all of these algorithms. So we can capture this data, we can process it, and we can generate new fundamental insights. Now, the downside, of course, is that means it's outside of these protected places. And so we often have wet environments or hot environments, dusty. So we need a lot more durability. And that's where we come into Dell's OEM group and our partners like UNICOM, right? Because that's what lets us take that compute outside of these protected environments and throw it out there right next to you under your desk, in your office, in the back of a truck, outside in the rain. So we're seeing some really excellent places. And then fundamentally, the other piece of it is new business models are making the edge relevant, right? So we can actually use all of these insights that we're getting in new and novel ways so that it makes sense for people to invest in this technology.
You know, that's a great point. That kind of leads me exactly where I wanted to go next. And that was to talk about the types of applications or workloads you're really seeing at the edge. Can you break that down for us?
So that's actually a really broad question because we've been talking for a long while about solutions and business problems and things like that. But then fundamentally, IT was building clouds and data centers. And it was this giant slab of compute and storage. And then you just put applications on top of it. What are the applications? I don't really know. I don't really care, right? I'm building this big space. Now we're putting it out into a retail environment to solve a retail problem, or into a factory to solve a factory problem. And so we're getting things like a restaurant, like a quick serve restaurant wants 5 cash registers. And they want all of the processing done there so that they're backhauling just the data that they need. And what's the application? It runs right there. And so we're seeing these very specific use cases coming up, which is actually part of the challenges that we're seeing as well, because a lot of companies find, I'm going to solve the cash register challenge at my retail. Now I'm going to solve theft prevention at retail. Now I'm going to solve, looking at people's temperatures to make sure they don't have a fever. And they have all these little point solutions. And we're starting to see all of the siloing and the complexity and this massive sprawl of technology that's out there. So we want to decentralize the compute to get the value, but now we're decentralizing it too much. And we have to kind of re-centralize it in the locations a little bit just to get some of to share the data across the different use cases, to collect that data and capture it a little bit more so that we can look at it and start to merge that information to get even more value from the data, and a little bit longer term, maybe long term. But we're starting to see more cases where we're collecting data. So for instance, we talked to a city a while ago that had 6 different video cameras at every traffic light pointing in the same place. And one was checking license plates, and one was doing facial recognition, and one was looking for speeders, right? And instead, we said, how about we have one video camera, and then you just capture the data and process it multiple times. Yeah. Great, right? Now we have fewer devices hanging out there in the weather and taking up phone pole space and stuff like that. So it ends up being a lot more cost effective. And then you have that data and you can look, as you get another new use case, you don't have to put another camera up there. You just toss the algorithm onto the compute and you get more value. So it's getting much more vertical specific, and it's custom tailored, which again is where we come into. We have these great partners that are building specific solutions for our customers, and we as Dell Technologies need to leverage your expertise to get out there and start to share those use cases across. Right? Traditionally, we were part of building those data centers, and we had partners that were building the specific applications, installing them, customizing them for the users, and that's becoming much, much more important out at the edge.
There's a certain subset of our audience that is shaking their fist right now saying, you, Bill Pfeifer, you are the one responsible for me getting that speeding ticket at that light somewhere in Los Angeles or something like that. Not really, I'm sure. But, one of the interesting things that stands out to me about this is that you at Dell Technologies have been working with partners and clients and customers for over 2 decades on projects at the edge, right? And it's become a buzzword now, but this is an area that you and Dell Technologies has a lot of experience working with this, and we're just now seeing maybe some of these use cases begin to arise, but this is something you have a lot of experience with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in particular, our OEM team was formed, I think it was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Based on the regular production runs of Dell gear. We had customers that said, but I need a little bit of customization. I need it to be a little smaller. I need it to be a little higher temperature. I need it to be whatever. And so Michael Dell spun off kind of a small internal group, and it's just been growing and growing. And it's a fantastic business. And actually a lot of the knowledge that they get from those high-end customization, right? They do like a lot of military things and undersea things and really difficult environments. And then that works its way back into the mainstream product set. So our mainstream product set gets all these great boosts as well, just because we have institutionally so much more depth of knowledge in how to handle the wackiest environments. So it makes the regular environments or the more regular environments easier to handle.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask about was how you're seeing OEM customers really drive that innovation at the edge. Is it simply that they're going to put things in different environments, and that in and of itself is causing adaptation and reasons to continue innovating?
So the interesting thing that I see about the edge from a customer perspective, we've been talking about OT, operational technologists, and IT, information technologists, right? So the IT folks were building the data centers in clouds that everyone was computing on. The OT teams were building the factories and the heavy automation and the retail stores and things like that, right? Like actually where the business happens. And we talk for a long time about IT and OT integration and collaboration and getting a happier relationship between the two. And fundamentally, the edge is kind of where that's happening, right? We're putting IT type technology in OT type environments. And so where IT has the old mantra, move fast and break things, right? Like you need to be up for 2 nights or 3 nights or something like that. Unexpected outages, yeah, that's okay, no big deal. And OT is running the power generation for a city or the water pumping or the electricity for a hospital. Really bad things happen when OT goes down. And so IT is coming in and making fast changes, and sometimes things break. And OT is running something 100% of the time, and things don't break, right? Like very different priorities. And now at the edge, we're moving this IT technology into OT, and we have to find the happy medium. And so that's where we have to really start to analyze what's the OT goal, what's the IT goal, how do we modernize fast enough but not too fast, how do we add cool new features but don't break things that can't be broken. So now we get into kind of bimodal IT where we have like the move fast and break things, but the fundamental don't break this stuff. So you have the foundational layer and then the stuff that rides on top of it, but you have to keep them separate because otherwise you break the foundational layer. So that's the stuff that we're seeing as that's where the real innovation is happening, is where we can find those integration points to merge those two teams seamlessly. And when it's not seamless, then the innovation stops because people get unhappy and SLAs are not met.
Yes, that is absolutely right. Absolutely right. So Bill, what role do things like data management, AI, and edge computing really play at the edge? Can you break down the roles of each of those things?
Sure. So fundamentally, the whole concept of the edge is about capturing data and running it through those AI algorithms to generate some insight, and then running like a DevOps process or something like that to build automation to do something with that insight very quickly. And that's all running on edge computing, right? Mm-hmm. So we're capturing this streaming data. Again, it's usually privacy sensitive or speed sensitive or size sensitive, right? If you think the easy example is autonomous vehicles, right? We have 8 cameras looking all around the world, and you've got some infrared, and you've got some LiDAR, and you've got this massive streaming data feed. 5 minutes later, that video is worth nothing. But in sub-second response time type stuff, it's immensely valuable. Right? Is there someone running at the side of the vehicle? Are you coming really fast at a tree? What's going on? So you have to make those really fast decisions. And you have to be able to draw really good conclusions and then act on those conclusions. You don't want to just pop up a message on the dashboard, you're about to hit a tree, boom, right? So, yes. So it's that data management to say, is this data valuable? Do I need to raise it to the attention of something that's going to take action? What's the appropriate action? What does it mean? And then take the action. That's all what's driving the value of the edge. That's why our customers are investing in the edge in the first place, is because we have access to this data and we can finally intelligently grab it, run it through the new algorithms, run it through those high-powered processors that can give you those fast insights, and then either discard the data or save it for longer term if it's of value.
So one of the other big talking points and topics of conversation over the last several years has been 5G. So what role will 5G play, and how will 5G continue to drive the edge?
So 5G is a super fun conversation. And the short answer is we don't know yet.
That's always fun.
Is something that we often miss, right? But if you think back to when we had 3G and 4G was coming, everyone said it's going to change the world because it's so much faster. It's not. Being faster isn't what changed the world. But when we had 3G, we didn't have ride-sharing apps. With that always on, constantly connected, high scale, right? Thousands of people can be connected at the same time. And we can see, there's a car coming around the corner. That's my car. I can walk out, and the app will tell you, walk out to the curb and turn right, walk to the corner. They'll pick you up right there. And now I can get from one city to another, and I don't have to know where I am or where I'm going, but the app will tell me when I'm going to get there and how much it's going to cost me. That's all I really want to know. And so in a 3G world, we couldn't say we're going to have this cool thing and it's going to change the way we think about cars. But now as we look at 5G, we're saying we have 4G and 5G is coming. It's going to change the world. It's so much faster. Faster isn't what's going to change the world. What's mostly going to change the world, it's software defined, it's super high density. And so what that's likely to mean, my guess, is the world of sensors and devices is going to start reacting to me so that I don't have to react to the world. So you can already see that, like the early pieces of that with home automation. And it's been around for a while now. So it's really kind of a primitive version of this. But when I show up at home, if I have the home automation set up, then it can say, oh, your phone joined Wi-Fi, you're home, I'm going to unlock the doors, I'm going to turn on the lights, I'm going to turn up the temperature a little bit, and I'll, turn on the TV to your favorite show.
Yeah.
My house starts to react to me because I programmed it to. But I think with 5G, we're going to start to see things like devices that couldn't share data before can now start sharing data, and they can interact with other devices. It's all that device to device, machine to machine kind of connectivity that's going to happen. That's really where the magic of 5G is. And it will let us capture even more data than before, right? So as comms get better, 5G, Wi-Fi 6, things like that, we're going to have a lot more flexibility for where the edge computing sits. We can pull it near prem as opposed to like right there out at the edge. But it's also going to be a lot about that high capacity, many devices. So we're going to have those devices and have the 5G, and then someone very clever is going to build an app, and we're going to look back and say, wow, we couldn't possibly, how did we survive before this thing? Just like ride sharing, right? So I can't wait to see it. It's going to be amazing. We really can't see what that is right now. I can't see around that corner that far.
Well, someone brilliant out there is certainly going to come up with it, and it will be amazing to see. But Bill, one of the other things that has been a big topic of conversation has been security as well. A big factor at the edge and everywhere, honestly, now. Security is obviously top of mind for everyone. So how does Dell help ensure cyber resiliency?
So there's a funny thing about our security story as well. Years ago, we built this story that we called intrinsic security, right? And the idea is, when we order chips and other parts into our supply chain, we can validate the chips that arrive are the chips that we ordered, and nobody played with them in transit and added additional code or swapped them out for something with backdoors and things like that. We build the device that you order, and we can certify that that's the device that you order. We ship it to you, and we have a supply chain that can assure us that nobody's opened up the device. Nobody changed out the hard drives or added backdoor hardware, software, anything like that.
Right.
And we can certify when it shows up at your door, that's the device that you ordered, and we shipped it to the place that it was supposed to land. When you turn it on, it can call home and do things like, we have a chip called the iDRAC chip inside the device that will take an inventory of everything in the device, and it can tell you even if the power's off, if the chassis has been opened. And it can tell you if the hard drive that's in there is the hard drive that was in there. And if it's not, then either it can alert you, hey, something changed, or it can just not boot, right? Like, this is a secure enough application, just leave it offline until we can validate what happened.
Right.
When you're talking about data center type operations, that's of limited value, right? Of course, the device that showed up is the one that I ordered because I validated that myself. And I racked it, but now when I'm shipping it out to a retail store 1,000 miles away from me, someone's going to stick it in a rack and plug it into my network. Is that a good idea? I hope so. So, right, like that, there is this huge problem at the edge of things show up and they get plugged in and they join your network.
Yeah.
Did someone out there open it? I don't know because I can't see the device. Is someone opening it now? I don't know because I can't see the device. And we had this solved a long time ago, and it's perfect. So we've already solved one of the biggest challenges of decentralizing this hardware, which is fantastic. And so we're having a great time with that. And then we have some additional things, hardware root of trust and SOC 2 compliance for financial and manufacturing industries, things like that. Federal, that's a big thing. But really, we've got all of this security that's built in just at the very foundational layer that is really, really immensely difficult if you're not ready for it. And so we're starting to see a lot of traction with that, especially as we're distributing it out to these difficult environments, putting them out on the bases of streetlights and things like that.
So we've talked a lot about where we've been in the past, where we currently are right now at the edge. But let's look ahead a little bit here, Bill, as we begin to wrap up this episode. What's the future of edge deployments in your mind? And what are some potential use cases that you see maybe down the road even?
So another kind of squishy answer, but it's a future prognostication kind of thing. So I'm going to guess. I've actually seen recently a stat that I'm going to say by 2026, 30% of the global 2,000 companies' revenue will come from partnerships, shared operations, shared data, basically engaging with external entities to share business. So it's not even necessarily about the edge that you own or the data that you own. Either you own the data and it's valuable to someone else, or someone else owns the data or the location or the hardware and it's valuable to you. And so there's going to be this major kind of sharing economy of technology. We're going to have to kind of break those silos between companies. That stat comes from IDC Futurescapes 2022. Fantastic stat. I love it because it opens up this conversation of how do we partner more actively with our partners, right? Like it's not just about what I can do with the data or, oh, I don't have access to that data. Well, I guess we just have to do without. Maybe somebody has that data. Maybe I can help somebody with that data. And so we're going to have more open relationships. But the future of edge deployments themselves, the technology, compute technology, particularly storage, networking, is going to become much more ubiquitous. And so we're going to have all of these functions running all over the place. We're going to get more interconnected, less siloed. So physically, operationally, but again, even across company boundaries, right? We'll start to share across those so that we don't have to hang 6 cameras on a light post, right? We can have, oh, there's already a camera there. How can I get access to that data? And maybe it costs you 25 cents a day instead of hanging a camera on one. So I think it's going to be a lot more about that kind of working in partnership, and it's going to be a much more rich ecosystem that's got a lot more interconnections.
That's very well put, and an excellent prognostication, if I do say so myself. So, Bill, as we wrap this episode up here today, any final thoughts that you want to share with listeners and viewers out there about the edge? Anything that you want people to know after they walk away from this conversation?
I think it's really just that, first and foremost, we talk about the edge as an emerging technology space, but some of the folks at Dell joke that it's the oldest emerging technology on the planet, right? Again, our OEM team has been working here for 25-ish years. We have partners that are so deeply embedded in our customers and have such loyal relationships with them and really working tightly with their OT teams. And it's going to be so much more about that ecosystem, those interactions, and developing it. So we consider it an emerging space because it's changing so fast right now, not because it's new, but we've been there, our partners have been there, OT has been working at the edge since there was OT, right? They're the ones who built it. And so from an IT perspective, we say, wow, it's new, and OT is like, it's not new. We're just increasing those interconnections. So OT to IT and customer to customer and across partners and things like that. So as we do that, as we open up more, right, it's kind of like open sourcing software. You get much more innovation, you get much more collaboration, and you start to see exponential increases in the value that you get out of this. It's going to be fascinating to see what we can do as we get access to so much more data and we put that into the really smart people's hands.
Well, we will all stay tuned and watch to see what comes next. But for this episode, Bill Pfeifer, Edge Messaging Director at Dell Technologies. Bill, thank you so much for joining us here on the Flawless Execution podcast brought to you by UNICOM Engineering. It's been a pleasure.
And thanks for having me, Tyler, and UNICOM. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And everyone out there, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the show. For more, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or of course, by visiting the UNICOM Engineering website. There you can stay up to date with all the latest news, trends, and information. And stay tuned. Like I said, we'll be back soon with more episodes of the show. But for Bill Pfeifer, I'm Tyler Kern. We'll talk to you next time.